Hey, what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here, and I'm back again for another video. Now this time I wanted to take a look at video games based on superheroes, as video games based on them have been around basically as long as video games been around, all the way back to games like Superman on the Atari 2600. So in this video I wanted to take a look at 5 in my collection, so without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so the first game on my list is going to be one of my favorite superhero games that came out on the original PlayStation all the way back in like 1999 or 2000 or so. This is Spider-Man on the PlayStation. Now, they got a port to the Dreamcast as well. I prefer this version to the Dreamcast simply because I prefer the controller. But in this, you play as Spider-Man, and I remember this being one of the first games that I played as far as superhero games go that make you feel like the superhero. Web slinging in this game was exhilarating at the time, even though you couldn't web sling from the tops of the buildings to the ground. They didn't have the side missions and all the things that they have in open world Spider-Man games today, but at the time this was doing pretty much basically what you could get away with on systems at the time. The graphics on it look pretty good for the PlayStation. They're very simplistic, but they're very clean as well. They were very careful about what they use as far as details, and while everything's not as detailed as it could be, you don't see things like texture warping so much, and a lot of other weird things that the PlayStation had going on with it as far as the graphics. The gameplay is fantastic. It's a beat 'em up of sorts, a brawler, and this takes place on rooftops. You'll swing from rooftop to rooftop taking out enemies. They've also got a bunch of interior levels to play, a lot of cool collectibles as far as collecting pages from comic books. And this game had a very comic book theme. It was pretty much drawing on the comic book history of Spider-Man, and you got a lot of things that provided a history lesson, like some of the original art straight out of the old school comic books. And collecting those also served a purpose because it would allow you to unlock different suits, and so that was really cool. And that reminded me a lot of the Spider-Man that we got a couple of years ago on the PS4, and that was one thing I really enjoyed about that game, how you could collect suits and no DLC required. So this game was a lot of fun. You got a lot of different powers and a lot of different moves. You can form like web brass knuckles to make your punches and kicks stronger. You can use a web shield. You can kind of use like a web different web swings and things like that. And all in all, this is a fantastic game. I do like to go back and play it every once in a while just to kind of see where Spider-Mans have come since then. But this one is very cheap, and this one you can find around about $10 to $12. So if you see it, definitely pick it up. It also had a sequel that I'm on the lookout for on the original PlayStation. I want to say it's called Mask of Electro or something like that, but if I pick that up, I'll be sure to let you know. First game, Spider-Man, definitely check it out. Okay, going on to the next game, and this one came out on the Xbox 360. It was based on Thor, the God of Thunder, and it was kind of pretty much based on the movie that came out around the same time. It was released around the same time. And this, of course, is Thor, God of Thunder. On the Xbox 360, I'm pretty sure it was ported to the PS3 as well. But in this, you play as Thor, the God of Thunder. It doesn't follow the movie so much, which actually is a pretty good thing in my opinion. It's a prequel of sorts that takes place before the events of the movie. A friend of yours is believed to have been killed, and so you go on this quest of revenge to avenge them. But lo and behold, guess what? It was Loki all the time, stringing everybody along. The storyline is pretty cookie cutter and predictable, and unfortunately that is a lot of this game in a nutshell. It's definitely a game that you've seen and played before. Again, this one is a brawler at its heart, and I just wish that there was a lot of missed opportunities with this game. The graphics, not very well as far as the Xbox 360 goes. They don't look good. I don't think they age well, so they're not going to age well in the future. They're pretty bland and colorless. The combat in it, the controls have some really weird issues with the controls. The controls have a delay, which is not good. So you'll press a button and then it really won't take effect. It's about a half second to a second delay, which is not good, and that makes combat frustrating as far as like blocks and dodges and things like that. So you'll take hits from the enemies until you get used to it, which you can get used to it. It basically plays like a poor man's God of War, where you'll go in and attack hordes of enemies, and you'll unlock powers along the way. You'll unlock power-ups to Mjolnir. And while I did find enjoyment of this game, I'm disappointed in it overall, as I felt it could have been so much more. But I mean, it is a licensed movie game, so what are you gonna do? But if you do find this one, it is dirt cheap. This one is I picked it up less than $10, and I'm sure you still can too as of the time of this video. So if you are a fan of brawlers, you will find enjoyment in this. If you're a fan of Thor, you will find enjoyment in this. But other than that, this one I can't recommend. Alright, shooting back to the NES now, and I've got a tough one from Arcadia. This is Silver Surfer on the original NES, and I remember this is this is probably one of the first superhero games that I played back in the day. And I thought for its difficulty, I thought this game was pretty dope. This game is, it kicks butt and will kick your butt. In this game, you play as Silver Surfer. You've been summoned by Galaxus to find five pieces of this device that'll help you save the universe and yada yada. But and lo and behold, each one of the worlds, a boss is holding each piece of the device you need. So you go out on the quest. It plays kind of like a Mega Man style game, as after the short intro, it'll show the 5 enemies that you need to tackle, and you can tackle them in any order. This game is basically a vertical and a horizontal shooter. At some stages you'll play as a vertical shooter, some stages are in a horizontal shooter. I find the vertical shooting levels to be a little easier, as his sprite isn't as big as he is in the horizontal levels. He's a huge sprite, and it's one shot and you're done, which is very unfortunate. I wish they had given him a life bar in this game. That would have made the game so much more enjoyable. But I thought the graphics were pretty good at the time. The music is fantastic. I love the music in this game, and it was music that I remember years and years later. I can still think of it now. I haven't played this game in some time, but even when I stopped playing NES around 94, 95 or so, to when I picked it back up around the time I started college, this was a game that I remembered fondly for the music. And so yeah, top-notch music. The game, like I said, is very hard, and it's extremely hard to play if you're using the regular NES pad. That's just not going to cut it. If you play it with the NES pad, you're going to have to sit it in your lap and just basically tap, tap, tap on the fire button, and I mean, that makes every level an exercise in endurance. My suggestion, get yourself an Advantage controller with that turbo action, and with the joystick. That does make the game a lot easier, but make no mistake, this game will still kick your butt and frustrate you. But I found it to be a game that made me keep coming back. So I'm not sure what this is going for nowadays. I think it's hovering around the $25 mark for just the cart only, but if you see it, I do definitely think it's worth it. Or if you can emulate it or buy it from one of the Wii shops or something like that, definitely check it out. Silver Surfer. Okay, moving on with the penultimate game on this list, and this was a game that came out in early 2006, so it was kind of cross-platform. There was a PS2 and an original Xbox version, as well as a PS3 and Xbox 360. You want the 360 version, as of all the versions, I think it plays the best, and this is Superman Returns, so unfortunately, no matter what system you get it on, it's not going to be the best game you've ever played. That being said, I do think this is the best Superman game I've ever played, and this kind of loosely follows the events of Superman Returns. Like I said, the movie that came out in 2006. You play as Superman, and it starts off with you being captured, what is it, by Mongol, and the warlord, and so that'll get you familiar with the controls and the gameplay. Unlike the Thor game, in this you can pretty much take off and fly whenever you want, which is fantastic. And you can fly floor to ceiling in interior environments, which there are not many. I think the Mongol missions are basically the only missions that take place inside. But once you get back to Earth and on Metropolis, I mean, you can fly super high in the air. This game does have a really high ceiling, which is nice. And so you can fly up until you reach the ceiling several miles above the city. And in this game, the flight was the thing they did really good. Again, another game that had tons of potential, but unfortunately, I feel like they rushed the game out to make the date so it can coincide with the movie. And that's just what the whole game feels like. The story itself doesn't feel completely finished, and missions themselves don't feel completely finished. I just think with a little more polish, this could have been the great Superman game that we've always wanted. Still had a lot of cool ideas, as I mentioned before. The powers in it are really nice. You've got super breath and ice breath and laser vision and things like that, not to mention your super strength, your super speed. And in regards to the super speed, it does give you a great sense of that when you play this game, especially if you're flying. If you fly for several seconds uninterrupted, then you'll see the sonic boom as he breaks the sound barrier, and he'll go faster and faster. And like I said, the illusion of it is very well done. Like, you feel like you're going thousands of miles an hour. Same thing when you're running on the ground, although that's a little bit harder because of all the people in the city. You do tend to smack into cars and things like that. And this game, again, it's a brawler at its heart, and I think the combat is pretty good. You get more combos as you go through the game, and there's more moves that you can do. I love picking up cars and other objects and throwing them at enemies and tossing enemies in the buildings and things like that, which brings me to the health bar in this. And this was also a very unique idea. So Superman is basically a god, and he's basically indestructible unless you're talking about kryptonite. So what they did, they gave the city a life bar, and as you're doing the missions, for the most part, the enemies don't actively try to destroy the city, which is nice. They come after you, but as you guys fight through the city will get damaged. So if the city does get too damaged, then that's too great a loss of life, and Superman will consider himself a failure, and that's the end of the mission. I thought I was pretty cool with that. They did give you a Bizarro mode where you can play as Bizarro, and it's basically, at that point, it's Grand Theft Auto. You can destroy the city as much as you want and just get it off of your chest. And so I thought that was pretty cool that they threw that in there. The graphics are decent. They don't look that great on the PS2 and the Xbox, so I would definitely go with the 360 and the PS3 versions. Also, the map is smaller on the 6th gen version, so there was an extra island that they had to cut out and things like that. So as far as the games go, the 7th gen versions are the most complete versions as well. Unfortunately, like I said, this was just a game that didn't spend enough time in the oven. Had they taken more time to develop it, I think this could have been a really good game. But as it stands, it's a decent distraction, and I would say it's worth the $6 or $7 that you'll spend on it if you find it. So, Superman Returns. Alrighty, and now we're moving on to the final game on the list, and this one, WB, it was done by Rocksteady and DC, and this one, a fantastic game. You already know we're talking about the Batman Arkham saga, but in my opinion, the best one in the trilogy is Arkham City, and this is the Game of the Year edition on the PS3. Both versions play well as far as I can remember, but this is a fantastic game, and in my opinion, this is still probably the greatest superhero game ever made. Spider-Man is close, though. Maybe it's Spider-Man. Ooh, I feel like that we'll have to verse those at some point. But in this game, you play as the Caped Crusader. It takes place after the events of Arkham Asylum. Joker's not doing so well. He's pretty sick and dying and going off the rails. In the meantime, Arkham, with the events that happen in Arkham Asylum, the asylum is largely destroyed, and they felt like that they couldn't house inmates there anymore, so they basically sectioned off a part of Gotham City and walled it off and turned it into Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. And so that's basically where all criminals go, whether it's mental illness or violent criminals or whatever the case. Unfortunately, there's still citizens who live in that section of the city, and as Bruce Wayne, you're going there to stop a plot by Dr. Hugo Strange. You go in, you end up being captured and thrown in there, and so the first thing you do is call for Alfred to send you the bat suit, and he sends a drone on top of a building. You get up there, become the Cape Crusader, and then you're off to the races from there. This, again, one of the few games that made me feel like the superhero I was playing as. And that's a huge thing with any game. If you're saying that you're a ninja in this game, or you're a samurai, or you're a soldier, like, if you can really make me feel like I am that, like, that's all 5 stars in my opinion, just off the bat. Graphics fantastic. They stand up to what we see today. Even I think the graphics have aged very well. It's a very dark and moody game. The controls are fantastic. The combat system is one that games till this day are still trying to emulate with its brawler combat, the counter system, which I love. I love countering in video games, whether it be in fighting games or action adventure games, brawlers, beat 'em ups, anything that has a kind of a catch and counter move. Once I learned that, like, fantastic. I love it. So there's really nothing negative that I can say about this game. If I had to make any kind of critique of this game, I feel like Arkham City itself, I feel like the map is not as large as it could have been. But that being said, it's packed with, every inch of it. There's no wasted space in its level design. Everything has nods to the comic books or the cartoon shows or the lore of it. You can go to the spot where your parents were shot and killed, and there's a black rose there, and you can get an achievement just by making them stand there for a few seconds and pay his respects. Just little touches like that. Fantastic game. Everything from that to the boss battles. Everybody's talked about the Mr. Freeze boss battle in the police station. This game is just off the hook. There's literally nothing bad that I can say about this game. Very few games that I would consider 10 out of 10, and this is one of them. So if you haven't played this, what are you doing? Go out and get it. I can't remember. I believe they remastered it on the Xbox One and PS4. If they did, go scoop that up. If not, you can get the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 versions for dirt cheap, and that's what I did. I didn't feel the need to upgrade since I already had them, and they still look fantastic. So yeah, Batman Arkham City, go get that. Quit playing. Alright guys, so I do believe that's all I got for you today, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What are some great superhero games that you like that I can go back and review next time we talk about this, because there will be a next time. As always, if you do like this content, please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.